All right, take two. The Denver Nuggets finally lost in the NBA Western Conference Finals in 5 games to the Los Angeles Lakers. They surprised everybody, including myself. They surprised me so much that I recorded a video on them preparing for their offseason before they beat the Clippers in the second round. I just assumed that they would lose. They were down 3-1 at the time, and I decided to record a video on the Nuggets, just in preparation, getting things out a little bit ahead of time, getting ready to pre-upload things. But, they decided to make it not worth it at all because they ended up winning that series against the Clippers and, going 5 more games with the Lakers. So that was almost 2 weeks ago now that that video was recorded, and honestly, I don't think it's very relevant anymore at all. So we're just going to redo it from the start. My opinions have completely flipped on this team to where they were 2 weeks ago when they were down 3-1 to the Clippers. So we're going to be talking about the Denver Nuggets today and what their future looks like after they had, a much more successful postseason than a lot of people expected them to have. I want to begin with Jamal Murray because what a leap he has taken this postseason. It's been incredible to watch him grow and develop over these, past couple rounds and series of postseason games. He was awesome, of course, in the first round series against the Jazz, had 50-point games. Again, was great against the Clippers, was great against the Lakers. Ultimately, didn't quite have enough to get over the hump, but, they still competed admirably, and I thought that they did a good job against the Lakers considering the circumstances with, some ticky-tack calls early on in the game, getting Jokic and Murray both in foul trouble in multiple games in the series. Pretty much every game was close, but they just didn't have quite enough firepower. But Murray was awesome, and previously I thought that he was a little bit inconsistent. He would fluctuate between scoring, like 14, 15 points a night, and then one night he'd have 30, and then one night back down to like 12, and he would just kind of go up and down like that. But I think this postseason he kind of silenced the critics on that because he was very consistently, one of their best scorers. Him and Jokic were both, I thought they played well in pretty much every game this postseason, and so he has kind of really proven that he can play at a high level, and he's going to be definitely a contender for all-star games in the Western Conference, for the next multiple years because he's still young, only 23, 24, and so he will definitely be in the conversation for those all-star spots, and if he can keep continuing on this trajectory, he'll be a great guard, and he'll have a chance to lead this Denver team to a championship. Now, Nikola Jokic, of course, we know who he is. He's been really awesome for, the past 2-3 years now. The best passing center in the league. I consider him to be the best center in the NBA. At this point, I think he's proven enough to give him that spot. He's extremely talented, can bring the ball up the floor, even play point guard for you at times. Extremely skilled passer, good around the basket. He's just got this insane touch, great shot making ability, especially, just these weird, one-footed chucks from, long 2-point range, and he can hit them consistently. It's really ridiculous watching him. He's such a unique player and so fun to watch. But Jokic has really impressed me as well. Not only just improving his conditioning, we've seen his weight loss and his transformation into a different sort of player, being able to get up and down the floor a little bit quicker, be a little better on defense, more active hands, quicker feet, stuff like that. He's definitely improved on defense from what I've seen from him this postseason. He still needs to work on a couple things, namely I think cutting down on fouls. He was in foul trouble a lot against the Lakers. I thought a lot of those calls were pretty questionable, but he still has to put himself in a situation where he can stay in games late if he's in foul trouble. He is not effective. He has to play scared, and even fouling out, of course, is not something you want to be doing. So he's going to have to cut down on fouls, but really I think he just needs to keep continuing to get better. He's got the skill, and him and Murray are a great duo. They fit extremely well together. They're a great 1-2 punch, and it's just been really fun watching them grow together and grow into these awesome, unique players who can score, pass, defend. They're great together, and so I'm looking forward to seeing them continue to grow. And I think this is only the beginning for this duo because they are both still very young, and so they've got a lot of years ahead of them. And from there, I want to move just right into their cap sheet because they, around those two guys, those are their stars, and they've got a lot of role players around them. And I just like to talk about them just in order here. And so basically the rest of these role players, Gary Harris, Will Barton, Jeremy Grant, Michael Porter Jr. is the top end of their rotation, and those are their kind of core pieces, the rest of their core pieces. Gary Harris, great defender. can make some shots for you. You know, he's good as a 2-3, you know, combo guard, whatever, good defensive wing. He has certainly been valuable for them, and they've got him locked up for the next couple years. Will Barton, similar idea to Gary Harris. Unfortunately, he was not healthy for the postseason. They certainly missed him. I think they could have used him, especially against the Lakers, you know, another guy to put on LeBron. But, you know, he is locked up for the next couple years, same years, similar salary as Gary Harris. And again, he's a little bit more, he's a little older, more of a veteran, but he's a similar player, you know, can make some shots, good defensively. Jeremy Grant, who has a player option for next season for about $9 million. Reports are saying that he will likely not pick that up, and if I was him, I would not. I think he'll get more than that on the open market for sure. He showed his value. His offense really came around against the Lakers. He had a couple big games scoring-wise, you know, over 20 points, hitting those three-point shots. Obviously, he's great defensively as well. So, you know, like I've mentioned, the Nuggets have these great defensive wings. All three of those guys that I just said are really great defensively, also good shot makers. And so those are good players and types of players you want to have on contenders. And so I like all three of those guys. They have Harrison Barton locked up, at least for next year. And then Jeremy Grant, of course, has that player option. And so we will have to see what he decides to do with that, because I think he will opt out. Now, will Denver be willing to pay enough to retain him? Because he could make, you know, 15, 18, 20 million dollars, something in that range. That's about what I think he's worth. He's a very good player. So will he decide to maybe go to a team with more cap space, you know, that can offer him a little bit more money, or will Denver be willing to, you know, go into the luxury tax, whatever, pay the extra money in order to keep him? Not sure, but certainly I think that should be a high priority for them, because he showed his value, and we all saw it in that series against the Lakers, especially those last couple games. He played very well for them. So those are really the top half, the top of their rotation there. And then moving down, you see Michael Porter Jr. I mentioned him before. He is a big wild card on this team because he is still only 22. Effectively, this year was his rookie season. He didn't play his real rookie season because of injury, so this was the first time we've seen him on the NBA floor, and he certainly was, you know, showed why he had so much potential in the draft. He fell down because of some injury concerns and among some other things. And he, you know, he's had a couple of issues this year with like publicly calling out the coach and spouting conspiracy theories about this and that and whatever. But taking all the off-court stuff out of it, Michael Porter Jr. is a very good basketball player, and he's great offensively. He can hit those crazy three-point shots. He'll just shoot over you. He reminds me of Kevin Durant. That's a little bit of a lofty comparison, of course. You know, KD is one of the, you know, best players of this era. Obviously, we know what Kevin Durant can do, but Michael Porter Jr., just with his size and his shooting ability, sometimes he can just rise up and shoot over guys, and I see a little bit of KD in his game. I don't think he'll ever reach that ceiling, of course. You know, he's not as great of a ball handler, can't get his shots as well, not as efficient from the mid-range, but he can hit those shots for sure. And so if Porter Jr. can grow into that third star for Denver, that third scoring threat, you know, he's big for his position. He can hit threes like I mentioned. And so potentially if he can grow into like, you know, a 17, 18, 20 point per game scorer type guy, that would be huge for Denver, because I think they do still need a third scoring threat to take the pressure off of Murray and Jokic a little bit, because we saw just how much pressure was on Jamal Murray, especially in this postseason, to produce. And he, you know, he for the most part rose to the occasion, but in the end it wasn't quite enough. And so if they can get a third scoring threat, I think that would be really, really beneficial for them. And potentially that guy is on the roster in Michael Porter. So if he can grow into that, I think certainly that would be a very, you know, that would help push the Nuggets over the hump to get to championship contention. And so now getting into their free agents and what we can expect to see from the Nuggets this offseason, they actually have, you know, a decent amount of free agents. Taking a look at their roster here, Troy Daniels, Noah Vonleh, they don't care. Those guys don't matter. They're roster filler. PJ Dozier actually did play a little bit, and we saw him, you know, even against the Lakers in the playoffs, he was getting minutes there, you know, in those late game rotations. He was playing, and so I think he'll be a high priority for them to bring back. He's only 23. I think they can get him back on a fair deal. Torrey Craig was also a part of their rotation. He should be a priority for them to re-sign, you know, potentially $4, $5, $6 million a year for a couple more seasons. I think that's pretty fair for a guy like Torrey Craig. He's a good rotation guy, good defensively. Again, one of those good rotation Denver defensive wings that I've mentioned. Mason Plumlee, he lost a lot of value against the Lakers in this series. There was a couple pretty apparent blunders from him. I don't think he played well at all. And he had to play a little bit more because Jokic was in foul trouble so much. We saw a lot more of Mason Plumlee that I'm sure Mike Malone probably wanted to have. I think Denver will go looking for another backup center. And maybe it's Bol, but there is some injury concern with him, and obviously he's inexperienced. And so I think they're going to look for another backup center on the free agent market. And maybe bring somebody else in. I think Plumlee's time in Denver is over. I think he'll get another deal somewhere else. I don't think they'll be super motivated to bring him back. And then Paul Millsap is an interesting one as well because he's getting up there in age, 35 going on 36. He made $30 million this year. Was an expiring contract. I was honestly kind of surprised they didn't flip him at the deadline because when you have those max contract spots like that can be flipped for a star, that's potentially pretty valuable there. Didn't end up going down, and now I think they might have missed their window to trade for a third star. So unless there's some crazy deal involving Will Barton, Gary Harris, Michael Porter, whatever, all those guys thrown in, then they might not have the firepower to trade for a guy like Bradley Beal, Jrue Holiday, Victor Oladipo, whoever. Even though all those guys would certainly be good. So unless they were trading Harris and Barton, then you're kind of cutting into your depth. And so I think that might have been a mistake to hold on to Millsap for a little bit longer than they should have. He was good for them. I don't anticipate he'll be a too high of a priority for them to bring back just because he's getting up there in age. And I think that he might jump at the chance to jump to another contender, maybe on a little bit of a lower salary, but in an attempt to try to get a ring. Not saying that Denver's not a contender because I think they've proven to everybody that they are, but maybe Millsap looks to go to one of the LA teams or Golden State or the Bucks or whoever in the East might want to get another veteran guy in there who's a good defender, can knock down a couple shots, whatever. So I don't think Plumlee or Millsap are a super high priority for them. I think they need to find another backup center, maybe some more just wing players, maybe a backup point guard, even though Monte Morris has been good, just another guy to add in that guard rotation, I think should be priorities for them. And then also potentially finding an NBA deal for Bol. He's right now on a two-way deal. I anticipate they will upgrade him to a full NBA contract, bring him onto the roster full-time, let him play a little bit more, develop, play a little bit of that center backup role. Maybe they were playing in a small forward a little bit of that stretch guy in their really big lineup. That's kind of interesting, so we'll see what they do with him, but I would anticipate them bringing Bol up to a full deal and then just looking for backup center, another guard, and just always those 3 D wings that everybody's going to be looking for. So in the first video I recorded about the Nuggets, one of my biggest points was that I felt like they needed a third star in order to become a true contender because, they were about to lose to the Clippers. It didn't feel like they had quite enough to be in true contender status to make that full big leap. They still needed a third piece. Even as good as Murray is and as good as Jokic is, I still felt like they needed a third option. Now, I am going to backtrack on that just a little bit because I really feel like I was wrong about just how good this Murray-Jokic tandem can be. I did not see this, this level of consistent scoring coming from Jamal Murray. Jokic has taken his game to another level. And so these two, I think they might have enough if you can fill, the rest of the team with good role players, which I feel like they have. And if Michael Porter Jr. can develop into this third guy, I think they have a real shot at winning the title. These guys, we forget, but Jokic is only 25 and Murray is 23, and so they're well set up for the next multiple years. So if you asked me, I think that they should potentially look into adding a third star, but I wouldn't give up Michael Porter Jr. to do it. And it would probably involve trading both Harris and Barton. And so if you're doing that, potentially for a Jrue Holiday, I think if you can get him without giving up too much extra, I think that would be an okay move for them. Bradley Beal would probably cost too much, and I don't know if he fits next to Murray as well. I think Jrue Holiday, out of all the guys that are out there, I think he makes the most sense for them. Is he available for the right price? I'm not sure. If you were able to throw Barton and Harris together, I believe that makes up enough money, and then maybe like one first round pick, but any more than that I think is pushing it, because those guys are good, and the way that this roster is constructed right now I think works for them, at least for the next couple of years. Potentially there will be a need to make changes down the line, but I really like what this team has, and I wouldn't have said that 2 weeks ago, but you know, they've totally proven me wrong by coming back from 3-1 twice in a row. I thought they put up a good fight against a very good Lakers team. And so I'm just excited about the future for the Nuggets, and I don't think they need a third star anymore. I don't think they do. I think they can win with Murray and Jokic as their two best players and just filling the team with good role players. And so if I was Denver, I would look for those players to round out the roster like I mentioned, prioritize bringing back Jeremy Grant, and just keep going and see what you can do with another year of development for Murray and Jokic, and Michael Porter Jr. They, I think, will be contenders in the West for many years to come. So that's my thoughts on the Nuggets. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. Man, it's crazy how fast things can change in the NBA, because just 2 weeks ago my opinion was totally different on Denver, and I've done a complete 180 on them. I think they have a very bright future ahead. And so, but that's it for today. And we'll be back within the next couple of days talking about the Boston Celtics after they lost in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Miami Heat. The Celtics one I think will be interesting too. They've got some interesting decisions coming up this offseason, and so I'm excited to talk about them. But we'll be back with a Celtics video very soon. So that has been my preview on the Denver Nuggets, and I'll see you guys in the next one.